CrossFit move. All right, latest news headlines. We're putting a DFS, putting a sports betting spin on it. So the Cardinals announced a contract extension for Cliff Kingsbury and GM Steve Keim. So some stability there, if not necessarily at quarterback quite yet. So how are you feeling about the Cardinals right now? Like Arizona plus 350 to win the division, plus 1,200 to win the NFC. Like, are these the guys who can help continue to make Arizona improve? Or was the extension for Kingsbury maybe like a little premature for a team that, Geoff, really faded down the stretch?
Yeah, they sure did fade. You look at the Cardinals, you just look at some of the stat indicators out there. They're one of the top teams in DVOA through about 9 games of the year. 5 of their last 6 games, they came in with a negative DVOA rating. This is just a team that crumbled down the stretch. And rewarding Cliff Kingsbury at this juncture because his team made the playoffs, sure. But I'm not sold on the Cardinals being good long-term right now. Kingsbury is a coach who went 35-40 in 6 seasons at Texas Tech. Can be a fancy play caller all he wants. He was not a good in-game manager in college. He's not a good in-game manager in the pros. And really, he's not a good motivator. I mean, this team just absolutely crumbled. 24-1 in the pros so far. And look, if you want a stat here that just shows you how well Arizona ran at the start of the year, they fumbled 25 times on offense last year. They recovered 23 of those balls. There is no way that fumble luck is going to keep going over the course of the next year or even 2 years. So I think Arizona ran really hot through 9 games. You're seeing, Kyler Murray, obviously, with the motivation and just the injury factor rolling. No, I don't like this move at all for the Cardinals, and I don't really like their franchise right now.
Ooh.
Reid, do you have as dark an outlook for the Cardinals as Geoff?
Geoff with the fumble stats. It's like Pierce with the umpire stats.
Yeah.
RIP to the MLB. But I digress with the NFL. And I'm in the same camp as Geoff, but maybe not as outwardly angry about Cliff Kingsbury. Look, it's well documented that he doesn't do well later in the seasons, that he's not a good motivator, but teams take the identity of their head coach and their quarterback. And right now, not all the onus should be put on Cliff Kingsbury. Look at what Kyler Murray has done, right? He hasn't been able to stay healthy. He's electric. They need him to win games. They went from a 3-13 team to a playoff contending, right, in the middle of the season team that just hasn't gotten it done. Now, what scares me more than that, right, is I'm not worried about the re-signing of Cliff Kingsbury because what other options do the Cardinals have, right? There really wasn't any other options, head coach or quarterback, right? You're not going to not sign Kyler Murray. It's all of the free agents that they potentially have. Chandler Jones is probably not going to be there next year. AJ Green is a free agent. Chase Edmonds, Jeff's boy is a free agent. James Conner, Robert Alford, who was their best cornerback, but is still not a good cornerback, is a free agent, and Zach Ertz. So you have all of those guys who potentially they have to re-sign. They don't have a ton of cap space. That scares me more than Cliff Kingsbury. San Francisco is probably the one team that I really like. Their odds preseason from last year to win it all was plus 1,400. It's the same number this year with essentially Jimmy G. Either maybe he's there, maybe this is an early sign that he's going to stay. I don't think he does. Or that the San Francisco 49ers still have that good of a chance to make it with a quote unquote rookie quarterback. So I like San Francisco, don't like Arizona, but not necessarily because of Cliff Kingsbury.
All right, Pierce, what do we think?
I like the move. It's stability. It avoids going through, the vicious cycle of hiring coaches year after year. We've seen these teams always try to improve their coaching and dump a guy that maybe was just getting the system in place. I mean, really all you want from your head coach is just stability and a calm system where everyone's getting along. And we don't see anything in terms of feuds or problems in Arizona. So that's fine. Scheme-wise, yeah, Geoff talked about how they weren't executing and how they crumbled down the stretch. They had to deal with a lot of injuries. Offensively, yeah, it might be some of Kingsbury's play calling, and maybe he should, give up some of the play calling, and they should actually hire an offensive coordinator. This team doesn't even have an offensive coordinator. They have a run game coordinator, which is kind of the problem. They run the ball too much. So you keep Kingsbury, you bring in somebody else to help with the offensive end. You hope to get healthy. The division is going to be a problem, as Reid talked about. The San Francisco, I think Seattle will improve. Los Angeles just won the Super Bowl. It's a tough road ahead of them, but if they're healthy and Kingsbury just kind of gives a little bit of the play calling away, then I think they definitely could be a real threat.
All right, over in Las Vegas, new head coach Josh McDaniels says there's no doubt that Derek Carr is the starter in week 1. So 2-part question here. Is McDaniel saying that because he can help make Carr an MVP contender plus 4,000 if you're a believer in that, or because he can't find anyone else because it looks like Rodgers and Wilson are staying put, Reid?
Yes, that is my response. Yeah, look, I mean, he has to, right? You have to come into, and like Derek Carr has been there for a long time. He got that record-setting then contract extension, and which was quickly thwarted by other extensions by like guys like Rodgers. But when you take a look at what the Raiders need, it's Derek Carr, and this is kind of similar to what Pierce said about Cliff Kingsbury, is you got one of two things, right? You got to either extend him to an extension or you got to let him go. And if Josh McDaniels, the signing of this or the bringing in of Josh McDaniels signals that they probably want to keep Derek Carr, because if not, they probably would have gone a bit more defensive minded for their head coach, or maybe stayed with Rich Bisaccia. I don't really think that would have been the smart move. But now you bring in a guy like McDaniels, and look, his tenure in Denver, yes, it was bad, but look at who his quarterbacks were. It was Kyle Orton, and Tim Tebow. Those are his quarterbacks when he was head coach of Denver. Not the greatest. And so you take a look at Derek Carr. Well, he had really good, the win-loss ratio from last year with a team that was in a lot of dismantling of everything else. Derek Carr had a pretty good season, right? He had a bad offensive line. He had his best wide receiver / tight end be out for the majority of the season. And one of his speedy wide receivers, what happened, right? So now you got to take all that into consideration. I think it's a solid play. I think they extend Derek Carr. I think you have to. I think Josh McDaniels is the right call. So I do like the signal, but at the same time, I don't really worry about what he's saying because he has to say it.
Yeah, Pierce, is this some galaxy brain reverse psychology? What do we think?
No, I just think it's really, there is a scarce market for quarterbacks. If there was an improvement out there that you weren't going to have to trade away your franchise to get, then maybe they would consider it. But there isn't anyone out there, and they've got other needs, as Reid has mentioned. And if you look at what Derek Carr has done over previous seasons, he's been fine given the situations that he was in, dealing with different coaches, different schemes, poor offensive lines, erratic wide receiver play. If he could have anything consistent around him, he's the only consistent piece of this team over the last half a decade. So if he can get an offensive line just a little bit better and maybe a receiver that lives up to half of their potential, then he's going to be fine. And it doesn't really matter who the coach is.
Geoff, what's your take on this one?
I mean, look, I'm going to break a lot of people's hearts here, and maybe I'll get some hate mail for this, but like you look at Derek Carr's numbers versus like Matthew Stafford last year, it ain't much different, pal. I mean, it's, air yards, Carr is right behind Stafford, completions over 20 yards, or balls thrown over 20 yards as well. They basically exactly the same completion percentage. Derek Carr basically actually a little bit better than Matthew Stafford. The problem with Carr is he just wasn't on as good a team. He got pressured more. He obviously lost one of his top receivers mid-year. Darren Waller was banged up. He didn't have a Cooper Kupp option. You can win with Derek Carr. Do I want to bet him at MVP? No, I don't know if he's that good. And I'm not suggesting that he is that good or he's some kind of Aaron Rodgers in hiding or something, but he's definitely a solid enough quarterback to win. And I think with McDaniels there, and if they can beef up the wide receiver position a little bit in the offseason, I think he'll be absolutely fine.
And there's Patriots tried to trade for Derek Carr before Tom Brady left New England. And so that they did their due diligence on him a couple of years ago.
I mean, Bill Belichick's track record in quarterbacks after Brady is a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
So, good to note, though. Good to note. Staying under center, Ron Rivera said the Commanders are being very proactive in their quarterback search. So who's the best fit in Washington, Pierce? Will it be the much talked about Kenny Pickett and his tiny baby hands? Another rookie, maybe a trade? What do we think? I've been reading the article about how he's doing hand exercises to try and get those measurements up before it happens. What do hand measure? Like, what does that look like?
If we are already getting into those articles, we've got 2 more months of articles to look at. This is going to be pretty rough going.
It's be amazing. What are you talking about? This is the good stuff, Pierce. I mean,
this is the insider info I want to hear about.
Conspiracy theory articles. Come on, Pierce.
I like, Mitch Trubisky, but we've already talked about that. So Matt Corral would be the guy that I would go to coming into the season. He was going to be a top pick at the quarterback position. That hasn't happened. His stock has fallen. SEC quarterback. Maybe you don't like Lane Kiffin, but Lane Kiffin knows what he's going to do. Corral looks like he's going to be the top quarterback ready professionally wise for the season. I don't know. It's hard to know what to expect from these guys, But one thing I do know is everyone's down on this draft class. But if we are reading articles about their hand size now, 2 more months of constantly diving into all this crazy nonsense, we're going to love every single one of these quarterbacks. And my fear is that Cordell is going to become like a top 5 draft pick by the time the draft rolls around, whereas he should probably be in the later end of the first round.
Like, Geoff, I'm just saying, Pickett said to the media, the reason I didn't measure at the Senior Bowl was to have those extra couple weeks, just a common sense thing, having more time to work the exercises.
Look, here's a great stat from Michelle Magziak. I believe she works for NFL.com.
Is this the Brandon Allen thing?
Yes, the Brandon Allen thing. 21 QBs. This is fantastic. On Twitter, Michelle Magziak. 21 QBs since 2003 have had under 9-inch hand sizes at the combine. Pickett measured 8 and a quarter or 8.5, regardless of where you look, or depending on where you look. The best quarterbacks from those 21 QBs I mentioned have under 9-inch hand size. Brandon Allen or Charlie Fry. Those are the best 2 options. So historically, it has not been a good indicator. Does this mean that Kenny Pickett is going to be terrible? No, obviously it doesn't. But I do think that Washington is more inclined to take a chance with a guy like Mitch Trubisky. This is a team who had a really good defense a couple of years ago. They started to play better towards the end of last year. I think they'll be more inclined to go with a veteran, maybe take a quarterback in the later rounds. I think they'll be smart about it. I hope they will. Pierce is right. One of these quarterbacks is probably going to get some steam and probably going to end up getting drafted way too high. I just don't think Washington's going to be the team that reaches, but we have 2 months to figure that out. So,
all right, Reid, I'm just saying this is another Brandon Allen fact. He increased his hand measurements by 3/8 of an inch at the 2016 combine after he checked in at 8.5 inches at the Senior Bowl. So apparently the exercises really work. And obviously Joe Burrow has 9-inch hands. So
wait, how do you what's the deal?
Where do you measure? Yeah, I don't know.
How do you measure it? Because who cares? Who cares?
It's pinky to thumb.
Pinky to thumb. All right, fine. I mean, everything is funny on Twitter, and Geoff brings the obscure stats to the sweat. I love it. I mean, I feel like I'm on the Twilight Zone right now, a sci-fi channel, Ancient Aliens with Pearce Dietrich and Geoff Ulrich. But at the same time, look, those guys are fine. The guys that they mentioned. How about, this is a really off the wall, and I know this is Jeff's boy, Ryan Tannehill. How about we talk about Ryan Tannehill here? Massive cap hit, but Washington has the space to do it. It might be a little bit too much of an ask. It's a little bit out there, but he's not a franchise quarterback. But drafting early, like these guys mentioned, you're reaching on some of these guys that you probably wouldn't have to. Washington would give up a second, maybe a second-day pick or a second-round pick, and maybe like a later, 2023 late-round pick for someone like Tannehill. Maybe Tennessee tries to lure him away so they can bring in someone like Aaron Rodgers, if that's still in the cards. But that's the thing that you would want to try and do if you're Washington. I think if you reach on a quarterback, it's a little bit too much. And some of the other free agents right now that are out there are guys that are being traded, like someone we'll talk about in a little bit. Just, I don't think cut it. But getting Ryan Tannehill maybe as an outside pick.
All right, so another former MVP quarterback with an uncertain future. Let's talk about it. Matt Ryan, Matty Ice, former BC Eagle, go Eagles, did not get a vow of confidence from his GM or his coach yesterday. Both were given the chance to say Matt Ryan would be the Falcons quarterback. They said they anticipate him being on the team, but they'd also listen to offers. So in an NFC South that has no quarterbacks, can the Falcons afford to get rid of Ryan? They could end up with the best quarterback and be longest odds to win the division, plus 500 right now, Geoff.
This is just classic Falcons. The division's wide open. Breeze is gone. Brady's gone. And now what? Atlanta wants to get rid of their quarterback. I mean, I'm not like a big Matt Ryan stan or anything. I don't even think he's a Hall of Famer, but this is it, man. You get the one good year here out of Matt Ryan, and you try and make a run for this division title. There's so much turmoil. Guys are retiring every day on Tampa Bay. The Saints are without a quarterback. They might have to take this Kenny Pickett guy who's got, the tiny hands like we're talking about, or sign Trubisky. Russell Wilson probably not going anywhere. Aaron Rodgers, very doubtful. I don't know. I think Ryan stays, but there could be a team that comes in and swoops in and tries to grab him. And it sounds like Atlanta's at least going to listen to offers. I just don't know what the backup plan would be for Atlanta. I mean, I guess they'd be signing a Trubisky for a 1-year deal or something like that, which I don't even hate, but I think if you're Atlanta, you stick with your veteran because this is your opportunity. They've been building a little bit. They've got Kyle Pitts. I'm no Atlanta Falcons fan, but this division is absolutely wide open. I'm going to say he stays. but it sounds like he's available at the very least.
Yeah, Reid, what do you think?
Yeah, Geoff is usually the guy that brings like how about he goes to this team? Right? Like, how about Matt Ryan goes to like the San Francisco 49ers and some weird, that's usually Geoff's MO. The fact that he's saying everyone stays put is a little concerning. But I think he just misses Matthew Lazia. That's probably it.
Yeah.
But what about this? Because I'm going to take the Geoff stand here. What about him going to Denver? Right? I think it makes sense for him to go to Denver. If Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there and Denver is still looking for their quarterback, they've been horrible historically in the draft trying to get their next quarterback. Like everyone, it's a copycat league. Everyone's looking for their next Matt Stafford. Well, probably Matt Ryan is the closest thing that you're going to get to it. You already have, that defense, and you already have, a young core with Denver. Now you just need a quarterback. Drew Lock can get out of there. He can go somewhere to Atlanta. Atlanta can have their quote unquote bridge quarterback. But I like him doing that as opposed to saying, look, he's probably going to stay. That's probably the right answer. But let's get a little bit crazy here, Jesse.
I mean,
let's see him go to Denver.
One thing one reason why I didn't do that is two of the most obvious teams are in their division. They're not going to trade them in the division. I think Washington could be a possibility. Maybe Pierce has a better idea. I don't know. Probably not.
Pierce, do you have a better idea?
Well, I don't know exactly where he's going to wind up, but they need to trade him. He's obviously on the decline. Best case scenario, he has one good year in him. And look, normal year, no one would want to trade for Matt Ryan. But right here, right now, people are interested in taking Matt Ryan because there is this feeling of scarcity on the market. There aren't any quarterbacks available, and that means his value is at sky high. Now, you give these GMs 2 more months to go over tape, they're going to be in love with every quarterback in this draft. They're going to love guys, they're FCS contenders. And people say, well, I don't need to trade for a quarterback now. I know a guy that I can get in the 2nd or 3rd round. But right now, today in March, Matt Ryan looks pretty good. They need to trade him right now, today. This is the best you're going to get. If they wait, no one's going to want him. It's going to happen. Mark my words. In a couple more months of this show, we're going to love every quarterback that is out there. And we're going to love their hand size regardless of it.
We did this last time too with Matt Ryan. Like, come on, let him go.